Pigden, and this is video number 3. This is for my FM341 class, and these are some additional tools and tips working with the pen plus and minus tools, as well as the anchor point manipulation tool in Adobe Illustrator. To pick up where I left off in video number 2, I'm going to create myself another new file, and I'll just call this practice 3. Again, staying 8.5 by 11. This is pretty consistent as we work through the course of the semester, as well as keeping the color mode in red, green, blue. And I'll hit create. I will go to view, show grid, and I'll go to view, show rulers. And I'm going to ask you to tear off 2 toolboxes. One is the rectangle toolbox. These are pre-drawn shapes that are closed that we can work with. And then also the pen toolbox, if you could tear that off also. So we have these 2 little toolboxes. So in previous videos I spoke about how it's important when you're working with the pen tool, whether it's straight lines or shapes, to make sure that you close every shape. With the rectangle toolbox, which has rounded rectangle, the ellipse tool, polygon tool, and a star, these give you pre-drawn closed shapes. So the rectangle tool, you left click and drag, you can make a rectangle of your choice. Okay. If you want a specific size of a rectangle or a square, you left click on that rectangle tool, left click once on your workspace. You can actually put in the size measurement that you want. So I'll do 2 inches by 2 inches, and that will give me a perfect square. I can also make a perfect square if I'm not exactly the size, sure of the size that I want. Again, left click on the rectangle tool, left click and drag, and hold down the shift key, and this will conform the proportion, and so you can make the square of the size that you want. Right. This works very similar, same tool, rounded rectangle tool, except here you have rounded edges. You can also use the ellipse tool and make ovals. Or if you left click once on the workspace, you can put in the size that you're looking for. And I put in the same height and width, and that gave me a perfect circle. Okay. If I want to make a circle but I'm not exactly sure what size I want, you can left click, hold down the shift key on your keypad, left click and drag, and you can make a circle in the size that you want. Okay. So these rectangle square tools I use quite often as I'm drawing garments, along with the circle, ellipse tool, buttons, pockets, hang tags, any kind of patches, any square details or rounded details where I just want a complete closed shape. You can use any of these tools. With the selection tool, as I've mentioned previous, which is the V key, you can select and move around any of these shapes. If you grab a corner, hold down the shift key, you can change the size, conforming the proportion, or you can just grab a corner and left click and drag depending on how you want to change that shape to. Okay. With the direct selection tool, as I explained in video 2, you select off the shape, left click on the background so nothing is selected, hover on the line and find the little anchor point, and the word anchor point will pop up. You can left click and drag and actually change the shape by manipulating each of those anchor points. Okay? You can also select a handle and change the shape as well with the direct selection tool. So the direct selection tool is helpful in terms of changing the shape, as well as you can manipulate with the anchor points and change the curve of that line as well. All right. If you need to add some points in, you can use the plus add anchor point tool or the plus pen plus tool, and you can left click and just add some additional points on that line. If you select off the shape and then go back and use your direct selection tool, you hover over and find an anchor point, then you can manipulate any of those additional points that you just added. If you want to take out some anchor points, you can use the delete anchor point tool and left click on any of those anchor points that you just added. So I always suggest, as you're starting to develop shapes and then into silhouettes, don't redraw. You can always manipulate with the shape that you've started with, either with the direct selection tool, or you can add in some additional points that you can also manipulate then with the direct selection tool. Okay. The last point I want to show in this video is the anchor point tool. This will change a curved line to a straight line. So if you left click on that anchor point with that tool, you see that it actually gets rid of the curve. So depending on, as you're starting to think about drawing garments and shapes, if you've made a sleeve too rounded and you want to make it straight, this is a quick way that you can actually change that. If you have a square or a rectangle corner and you want it to be more rounded, left click on that anchor point, and depending on the direction that you drag your mouse, holding it down, you can change those two corners, two straight lines that form the corner, into a curved line. Then you can come back with the direct selection tool and actually manipulate the handle further. Okay, so just a couple additional tricks and tips that you can use with the pen plus and pen minus tool, as well as the anchor point tool. Okay? If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you very much. And in my next video, we will talk about in terms of how to create a t-shirt silhouette.